This is the Enchanted Fibres channel, and today's video is going to be everything I knit in 2023. My game plan overall is to have everything linked down below. I'll have information on screen, and then I'm looking to talk about my patterns mostly in chronological order, but there's a lot of overlap. And then I'll try to mention something I like or didn't like, but I will likely go off track a little bit here and there just because I do go on tangents like that. But either way, let's just get right into it so that this can be not too long, but still, you know, solid information. So my knitting journey started for 2023, technically in 2022. I started the Jacques Sweater by Kolibribyjohanna in November, and I finished that on February 26, 2023. So you might already be thinking, well, maybe you're not a judgmental person, but 3 months is a solid amount of time for a drop shoulder seamed sweater at a worsted weight gauge. But the story is I just take on some Etsy orders on the side, and because of that, sometimes my projects take, I'm never solely committed to a project, so my timelines are not the best reference point. But I would say on average, if I were to commit myself to a sweater, it might be around 3 weeks to a month. And then anything smaller than that could be 2 to 3 weeks if I fully commit. So that's a little, side note, but either way, I wrapped it up in February 26, 2023. And I knit the size small. So the yarn I used was Spindle Yarn Seafarer in Shoreline. And I also, the contrasting stripes were Knit Picks Simply Alpaca. By the way, my notes are right there. Overall, my thoughts are I have been struggling to style it, so I haven't been gravitated towards it as much. It also could be the color, maybe in a sense the color is a bit muted and maybe it's not drawing my eye as much because of that. I'm not entirely sure. But my overall thoughts are that I think I just need to work on styling it better, and then I might be able to get more wear out of it in 2024. I will also say for majority of 2023, my sleeves were too long just because I followed the pattern and my vertical gauge was off. So my sleeves were too long, and then it took me a long time to fix it. So a big part of it was my sleeves were too long for a long time, and then therefore I wasn't gonna wear it. It just awkwardly was bunching up. They must have been this long, right? So they were awkwardly bunching up, especially because they were already sort of a balloon sleeve, give or take. So that's that one. And also, before I forget, I am wearing, the lighting is dim right now, but I'm wearing my Lane Loop tee by Other Loops. And this is one I just finished recently before the end of the year. And I will talk a bit more about it later, but I'll definitely talk in detail about it in my next knitting podcast, which will be the beginning of 2024, January sometime. So the next pattern I'm going to chat about is the Small Rolled Sweater. This was a Wool and the Gang kit, and I knit a size extra small. The yarn it called for was Alpacino Merino in the colorway Sahara Dust. And I had actually... So it was a kit, so obviously it comes with a pre-established amount of yarn for your size. And I had 2 balls left. So I'll figure out something to do with those, probably an accessory of some kind. So I definitely didn't use as much yardage as it called for. I was working on this from March 3rd until April 2nd. And overall, what I like is the texture is obviously very soft. I don't think it's too itchy. I am starting to realize that if I just wear a t-shirt under everything, it actually adds a cute dimension or depth to the layering adds something to the outfit. And then also I have no issues with itch because I feel my arms are pretty chill, and it would really just be this neck area that would be, if anything, a little sensitive. So overall, I think it's a really soft texture. I did make a mistake when I was seaming the set in sleeves, and I also recently corrected that mistake today, actually before this video, just because it was on my mind, and I was you know what, now's the time, So I essentially unseamed the sleeves and then re-seamed them, and I did a couple adjustments, because I will say I think it's a little bit of the pattern's fault and not actually a fault of mine. Just the way the sleeve is shaped. I don't even know the technical term, but a normal sewing sleeve is kind of like whoop, whoop, right? And this one was more like whoop, whoop. And it just did not fit in the spaces properly. So I folded some things in and I kind of just made it into a shape that would work. And then I seamed it from there and I think it looks good. So TBD on if I wear it, but up until now I haven't worn it because I hadn't initially messed up on the sudden sleeve seaming. The next item I was working on was the Gemma Polo. I knit the size extra small and it is by Cookie the Knitter. This is definitely one of my favorite knits by far. I was working on it from April 1st until June 5th, although that was not exclusively working on it. And the yarn I used was Knit Picks Wool of the Andes in the colorway Evergreen, which I got on clearance. I used 1,058 yards, which I believe is less than what the pattern called for. And then overall, my thoughts, I loved it in general, or I do love it in general. The color is really nice. The drape is also really nice, the way it blocked out. And then my only thing I don't love is that I did make a mistake in the knitting process, which I speak more about in my previous knitting podcast. So essentially, because I didn't backwards loop cast on a specific area, I had to knit a little small patch and I grafted it in. And it's slightly visible. It would just be really cool if it wasn't. That being said, I don't think, if someone else were to look at it, they might think it's an intentional design feature. So it does kind of blend in with the overall sweater. And the only other thing I also kind of regret, but it's not a deal breaker, is I just got lazy when I was double knitting the collar. I think I knit it a few centimeters shorter than it was supposed to be. And because of that, it doesn't lay. If I move around a bunch, it'll essentially pop up. So it's like a popped collar. I think though, it looks really cool. So it looks intentional, but if I really wanted the desired, flat collar look, I would have had to probably knit it a bit longer just so that it had a bit more fabric to work with. That being said, it's definitely not a deal breaker, and I think in the future I'll just knit a different colored knit and not get lazy with the length of the collar. Okay, so I'm gonna go backtrack on my notes here. So a little small gift knit I knit from May 1st until May 7th was the Willums Overalls by Petite Knit. This was a gift knit for my sister who at the time was pregnant. Now she has a baby boy. I knit the size 6 for him and I used Cascade 220 Superwash, which I thrifted in the colorway black. I think it worked out really well. I used 220 yards. I can't remember how true that is to the pattern, yardage, but I think it turned out good. He was wearing them over the holidays and looked very cute. He is a little bit pudgy. He's a little bit of a pudgy baby, and Rachel and Michele, they agreed on that. They were he's kind of exploding out of all his clothes right now. So I think overall it fit him really well. It's just if he ate a few less, he's not even eating right now, but if he was just a little bit less pudgy, I think it would have fit perfectly. But because the superwash yarn is super stretchy, overall I think it's pretty forgiving. So that's a good thing. Okay, we'll go to the next knit I created was the Montpellier top by NovemberKnits. This was a project that I saw, I think I don't know if I found it through Ravelry initially or if I found it through Instagram, but I think I just loved the aesthetic. I liked how it looked on the designer or the model, whichever one it was. And I felt like I wanted to make it for myself. I did buy yarn before deciding on the project, I think. So I think the yarn was a precursor to the project versus the other way around where you have a project in mind and you're okay, I need to find the perfect yarn. So the yarn I decided to use, and I did initially think it would be a pretty good fit, was this Bernat Flannelette yarn in the colorway Dove. I got the yarn from an outlet shop in Cambridge, and was essentially never actually officially produced. So I don't know if anyone can actually buy it anywhere, but it's a weird, like, it's technically a cotton, I think it's like a cotton nylon, I want to say, but it's a funny texture. It's almost like I want to say fleece, but that's going to be so misleading. So you'll see, because I'll have clips. I guess it'll be here. There's a good spot here for me to put clips. So I'll have clips of me wearing everything. But ultimately, I was working, I don't know if I said this, so I was working on this from June 6th until the 19th. So essentially 2 weeks. And I used 459 yards, which I think was less than what the pattern called for, but the yarn called for in the pattern was ultimately a different yarn. So I think the gauge was just a little bit different. You know, there's all these reasons, right? I think I've kind of overall implied this, but what I liked about it was the aesthetic and the idea of it, but the outcome and the fit is a little bit weird in this area here, and I feel like overall it's not that flattering, so I am struggling to style it. That being said, I'm going to try to keep experimenting with it over time, because I might grow into it. Even if I like actually grow in any way, like I might grow into it a bit better, or my style might change. So I'm going to hold on to it because, you know, might as well, things might change. And I didn't say this, but I knit the size 1. So this next knit was also a gift knit from my dad for his birthday. I decided to knit the soft cotton washcloths by Purl Soho. I don't know if it's also a for purchase pattern, but I used the free pattern on the blog. Overall, it was a good experience. It was using the linen stitch, which is a laborious stitch overall, but it has a really great finished look. So if you want that linen stitch look, like maybe for something like placemats, like a really dense, solid, sturdy material, it's a great choice. Just be prepared, you know, for that little hand workout, especially if you're using a cotton yarn, because that really is my only like qualm with this, was just it was a workout. But the end result is so cute. So take with that what you may. Is that the right saying? My next knit on here was also a gift knit, actually, from my mom for her birthday. And I started this on May 6th, and I ultimately completed it July 29th. This was a overall really fun pattern that I learned about from another podcaster, and I agree with everything she said. So it's a modular knit, and because of that, I think it just makes it super engaging, and the fact that you're building it in pieces, and the yarn I was working with was just like a super nice, like, you know, Madeline Tosh Merino Light, I think was one of them, and I used some hand dyed yarn. So I don't know, overall just the hand feel was a great experience. And then I did knit the size small. Part of me wonders like if it would have been more versatile as a large, but I think the large would have been too big and the small was almost a little bit on the small side. So it would have been nice if there was like a medium version out there. Overall for the small, now I did use like 5 colorways, but all in all, it was 401 yards. So I think that's pretty reasonable. Like it works out to be 4 skeins. Actually, I might be off base there. Ultimately, not a lot of yarn, and you could technically stash bust with this one. And it was super fun, and I would definitely make it again. And I think I want to make like a neutral light tone one for myself. That would be really cool. Or maybe I'll do like a grayy one. I don't know. But I have the pattern, so I might as well use it. Next on my list, and very inspired by the Barbie era, although I will say this was on my to-do list before Barbie was a thing. Like I've always been a hot pink lover. My prom dress in high school was also like a hot pink ball gown. So I've always been like a princess wearing hot pink since day one. And I do think this was on my radar before the Barbie, you know, what is it called? I don't know, Barbie Mania. But it was also going to go hand in hand with seeing the Barbie movie, so it was kind of perfect. But I wanted to knit a cute hot pink tank top to go with these hot pink linen pants I have. And I selected that I think I found it through Ravelry, the Elsa Tank top. I did knit the size small. However, I think next time I would knit the size extra small. To be honest, it was a little bit, it just, the way I wanted it to be more form-fitting, and it just kind of like flared out at the front because it wasn't, or maybe it was a little bit too big. For the Elsa tank top, I used the Mano Style Uruguay Silk Blend, and I used 299 yards for the size small. So I think overall, I'm really happy with it. I think the yarn was just amazing to work with, and the lace aspect was really fun too, to get the scalloped lace look at the bottom. And I would definitely make it again. I would just want to make it a lot longer. So I did follow the pattern measurements, and I think it's just way too cropped for me, or for my comfort. And then I would also knit, as mentioned, the extra small instead of the small. So from June 23rd to August 22nd, essentially a month, I was working on the Soho top by Caidree. I knit the size 3, and I did do a yarn substitute for Bendigo, or my yarn substitute was, Bendigo Woolen Mills Cotton Crush. It's a 4-ply. I used 421 yards for the pattern. So the pattern itself actually calls for fingering weight, I believe, or light fingering held double. And you get this really beautiful drapey garter stitch look. The yarn I substituted for, I did do a gauge swatch with it held double, and it was quite, it was really dense. Like, it would not have achieved the proper look at the end of it. So I held it single, and I did a gauge swatch, and I happened to meet gauge. So for whatever reason, it just worked out nicely. The only issue was, or I think, I said I met gauge, but I met like horizontal gauge, which I feel like is the most important. And then the vertical gauge, I think I adjusted for, so I just did more rows to meet the measurements. So with that being said, it just took a lot longer for me to make this than I think if I had bought the right yarn for the pattern. And overall, I love the look of it. I think it looks really cute with a blazer. Usually just because the yarn is so close to my skin tone, I need like the contrast. But overall, I'm really happy with it. And that's it. I have like really nothing negative to say about it. So I was going to Portugal, and I decided to apply for a test knit to see if I got accepted, because the timing would work out really well during my trip, and I would have time to do, or a lot of time on the trip to do a lot of knitting. So it was for the Sweater of Dreams for Perfectly Knotted. I did get selected, and I was knitting the size 34. Overall, I was working on the pattern from September 4th until October 25th. And I talk all about these patterns in previous podcasts, but it was a panel and seamed construction method. The yarn I used, they were both Portuguese brands. So Ovelha Negra is the shop, and Ophelia was the yarn. I used 830 yards. And then for the Mohair, I used Rosarios for Aurora, in the colorway dark gray, if that matters, and then I used 689 yards of that. Overall, I think it turned out good, but when I blocked the sleeves, they grew significantly. So on my wish list is to frog the sleeves back, and so reapply that I-cordage, frog them back, reapply that I-cordage. And then also, it is too cropped. Like, even though the pattern is essentially a made to measure, so I am technically the one at fault, like just for not doing the right measurements, but it ultimately was too cropped. So I do want to frog, I guess, the bind off on the 2x2 rib, and increase that maybe to be 5 inches instead of 3 inches to just get that perfect length is my goal. Overall, I think I will like it once I make these adjustments, but as of right now, I am not gravitating towards it at all. And I'm hoping on this video, or for the post-production of this video, I will have done those changes so that I can have footage of it all up to date here. Okay, so then I decided, I do have the Knit This book by Caidree or Veronica Lindberg, and I decided to try my first stab at brioche. I knit the Hello There Mohair beanie. I used kind of just yarn I have around, like I did not seek out the yarn for the pattern, I just had it, and I'm like, I'm gonna give it a go with this yarn. I was knitting on it from October 26th to November 5th, And the overall concept of the hat is you kind of have like 3 layers of brioche, and then the main body of it is stockinette, and it's a beanie sort of style hat. The yarn I used was Taylor Yarn Wool Basics in the colorway Rusty. And then the mohair I used was Rowan Kid Silk Haze in the colorway Campsis. I used 174 yards of each of these. And then overall, I think the color is great. I have no complaints about the color. It would have been so sharp if that mohair was like identically matched to the yarn or vice versa, but I kind of knew going into it, it was going to be like a marled look. And I guess the only downside with this pattern is a one size. There's only one size. So I knit that size. I don't remember if I met gauge or not anymore. I think I did. But the resulting hat for me was a bit tight. So I think just next time I would add on more stitches or knit it a bit looser or bigger yarn, bigger needles, something like that. I think I'm at my, oh my gosh, third last knit. So a project that I worked on for, it's going to sound like I worked on it for most of 2023, but what happened was it went on a deep freeze during the summer break. So I started this pattern March 31st and I finished it November 13th. I don't actually think I spent longer than a month on it all in all, but it sounds like I spent whatever, 6 months or whatever the math is. It was the Cardigan No. 6 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I knit the size extra small. I did substitute yarn, so I used the Patents North America lace in the colorway, I think it's antique, vintage, sorry. And I used 2,505 grams? That must be yards. I'm pretty sure that's yards. I'm really sorry if my notes are wrong. Either way, I did do one modification, which was instead of doing the requested or the style of button band that it was calling for, I did a double knit button band and I just started at the back, center back, and worked my way down. Because of that though, I forgot to knit buttonholes and it does not have buttons. I think overall it's fine with me and I think it's cute and I don't actually know if it needs buttons. So maybe in the future I'll find a way to do afterthought buttonholes, but for now I'm content with how it is and just being like a cardigan that doesn't actually button up here. The Lane Loop Tee by Other Loops. I knit the size small and I was working on this from November 11th to December 14th. Overall, just super happy with this project. I love the color. I don't know if the yarn color is showing up perfectly on camera right now. Like I really won't know until post-production, but it's just this beautiful like deep blue, but then it has this teal interspersed in it. So like the way the light catches it changes the color, but ultimately it's like a really bold blue. And I just love the oversized, the boxy fit and the sleeve detail here and the raglan detail, which you can't even see because of my hair. I think overall it was just a big win. I used yarn I got from Facebook Marketplace, which was the Knit Picks Andean Treasure in the colorway Sapphire Heather. I was initially worried about yarn chicken, but I actually had 2 balls or skeins left from that amount I had, or had gotten, sorry, English. But, so I guess I had 9 skeins and I used around 7 or 792 yards to get the size small. And in terms of what I like, I just think it's great. I kind of already mentioned what I like. And then in terms of what I would do differently or change, the neckband after I blocked it actually was like quite oversized. And I don't actually know if there's anything I could have done with that other than like maybe just a different yarn choice. Like I think the yarn just really grew and maybe even the weight of the garment itself just made it wider than when it was like pre-blocking. To rectify this, I just added elastic in the neckband. I don't know if you can even see it all, but I pulled it quite tight because I was like, you know what? I want this to be like the right fit. Otherwise I won't wear it. So I pulled it quite tight and I think it turned out pretty good. And there's not too much like bunching as a result of that. And my very last item was another gift knit for my mom for Christmas. I think my battery's gonna die, but this was the colorful half and half washcloths by Purl Soho. And this was a free pattern on her blog. I ultimately knit 3. I knit one, almost 2 patterns, so it was 70 stitches that I cast on, and the other 2 were 30 stitches per cloth, and then you just do this diagonal short row shaping pattern. I think the end result was super cute. Once I got the hang of it, I was going, you know, like no breaks were needed. I was technically knitting on these from November 23rd until December 22nd, but realistically, I think I was only knitting on them for like 4 days to get 3, maybe 4 days total in that actual time frame. And the yarn I used was just like a miscellaneous cotton, mostly just cotton leftovers for dishcloths that I've made in the past, and I didn't actually have to seek out buying anything for these patterns. And yeah, that's essentially, that's the bulk of what I made in 2023. There were a few other gift knits I didn't talk about, but I think just because of the nature of like I take on knitting orders as well, I don't really want to count those. I really just want to count majority of the things that I do for myself, or maybe like significant gifts that I feel like highlighting. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I wasn't like talking too fast, and I'm really excited for 2024. I did post a winter plans for 2024 video. I honestly kept it realistic, like instead of being the big dreamer like I probably was for 2023, I just actually tried to put down what I think I will successfully make. And if I make some additional things, that's great. Like I am honestly hustling right now. Just because like, not even because I want the product, but just, I just finished my school kind of, and now I'm like, okay, it's all about me. Like I'm just gonna knit. Obviously there will be like gift knits, I'm sure, that'll come up or interspersed throughout 2024, but I'm excited to just knit away and relax a little bit now. And also, this is a personal thing I'm working on. I want to work on being more assertive at work. I work with like, I mean, most of us are probably in the same boat, but I work in a corporate atmosphere with mostly 99% men. I think there's one woman. And I'm working on I want to work on being more assertive. That's kind of like a New Year's, I guess you could think of it as a New Year's resolution, but I want to work on being more assertive and straightforward, and just being honest and not worrying so much about, I don't know, not worrying so much about the consequences. So we'll see how that goes, but that's going to be, I don't know, my little New Year's resolution, to be more confident, more assertive. And that's even something my boss mentioned I need to work on. So, okay, I think that's it. So that's all my patterns I've gotten to. And I guess let me know in the comments what you think of my end results, or like let me know if you plan on knitting any of these items or anything at all. I welcome everything in the comments. Have a great day, or have a great New Year's if I get this up before then, which is unlikely. And I hope to see you next time.